If I'm our nominee, how is Hillary Clinton going to lecture me about living paycheck to paycheck? I was raised paycheck to paycheck. How is she going to lecture me? How is she going to lecture me about student loans? I owed over $100,000 just 4 years ago. If I'm our nominee, we will be the party of the future.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio joins us now. That's him at last night's debate. He was taking it to Hillary Clinton, and Trump got attention too, but Marco Rubio is one of the guys that they said was on his game last night. Senator, thank you for joining us. What did it do for your head and your heart to be there with these other 9 guys and see how you sized up? How do you think you came out?
Well, just a debate. I mean, it's the first one. There'll be a lot of, there's one next month. I think CNN's doing the one next month out at the Reagan Library, if I'm not mistaken. So there'll be others. And no matter what went well last night, we could give it all away next month if we don't do well. But it's part of this process, and it's of electing the most important political figure in the world, really. And it's a chance for voters to start to see us answering tough questions, sizing up, standing up next to each other. So it's just a of a process here, and I'm just honored to be a part of it.
You stayed away from Trump last night. Do you think he's going to be in the race for the long haul? And were you concerned to hear, well, not to hear, but to see him raise his hand and say, I may use my leverage and go on my own?
You know, I mean, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's a unique and singular individual who's been around for a long time. I was just commenting to somebody a moment ago. I remember when he owned a team in the USFL. A lot of people don't even remember that league anymore. So he's been around for a long time, and he's and I think he's going to be in this race. He's obviously struck a nerve on a couple issues that people are frustrated by. I ultimately want our party to be a party that's optimistic about the future. I am. I know America has problems, but my question to everybody is, well, what country would you rather be? I mean, who would you trade places with? I wouldn't rather be China or Brazil or India or the United Kingdom or Russia. I'm still glad we're America, but we do have challenges, but we can fix those challenges. I ultimately think that people want that message, and that's what I'm running on, and I think that's what will distinguish us over time.
Your theme of old versus new is obvious and consistent. Even with Trump, you're saying he's been around a long time, Hillary's been around a long time. You've been there for 5 years. Do you believe that your record in the Senate stands up to your rhetoric of being all about doing things differently and being different? Because the record, if you look at it, seems like, you know, solid work of a pretty run-of-the-mill senator, not someone who's all future-oriented.
Well, I would disagree with that characterization. If you look at the things I've tried to do, first of all, on higher education, on issues that aren't really partisan per se. I mean, we've tried, and I've worked with Democrats to achieve, along with Republicans, to achieve real reform to higher education. Right to know before you go is a bill that I have with Ron Wyden, and it would require that colleges tell students how much you can expect to make when you graduate with your degree from that school, so you can decide if it's worth borrowing thousands of dollars to pay for it. I've worked with Mark Warner on making income-based repayment the automatic repayment method for all student loans, because I myself had over $100,000 in student loans. On the day I took office in the Senate, by the way, I still had those loans. So those are just the smallest scale examples of the kinds of issues we've tried to work across the aisle on that are important for the future of our country that aren't getting enough attention. I mean, higher education is no longer just an option. It is a necessity.
There's no question.
If you don't have some sort of advanced education, you cannot find a job in the new economy.
There's no question.
But we can't keep graduating people with loans and degrees that don't lead to jobs.
There's no question. The government embraces a lot of things as tax deductions and advantages that it doesn't do with student loans. A lot of people have called for change, and it hasn't happened. You're pointing to the effort, if not the effect. Now, another thing that takes us into the future is culture. And last night, you had one of the moderators come after you about a huge issue, which is going to be reproductive rights in the form of abortion. Last night, here's what happened.
If you believe that life begins at conception, as you say you do, how do you justify ending a life just because it begins violently through no fault of the baby?
Well, Megan, first of all, I'm not sure that that's a correct assessment of my record. I would go on to add that I believe all
You don't favor a rape and an incest exception?
I have never said that, and I have never advocated that.
All right, now the first situation, as you know now, 2013, you were on that Bill 1670 that did have a carve-out for rape and incest, so it seems that
yes.
you had your own record wrong. Is that something you want to correct this morning?
No, that's not true. Everybody supported that bill. Every single pro-life senator, every single pro-life group, including the Catholic pro-life groups, supported the bill you're just talking about.
But it included the exception.
Because it prevents abortions.
But it included the exception.
Yeah, but so let me ask you, just think about it this way. I'm in favor of a 20-week abortion ban. Does that mean I'm in favor of abortions at 19 weeks? No. Any bill that reduces the number of abortions is a bill that I'm going to support.
But the bill did have that carve-out, and you said I've never been near it. That's all I'm saying.
No, I didn't say that. I said I've never advocated for that. What I've said is I've never advocated that. I've never said that I will only support a bill that has an exception in it. But I will support bills that have exceptions in it because they prevent abortions. I am here to try to save as many of those unborn children's lives as possible. And again, you cannot find a single senator who is pro-life who refused to support that bill because it had that exception in it. You will not find a single pro-life group that refused to support that bill because it had an exception in it.
Okay.
We are in the business, if we can prevent one abortion, I'm going to be in favor of it. It doesn't mean it's a prerequisite to me having to support the bill.
Right. I understand your argument. I wanted to have you have a chance to clarify it because when they find a bill that you co-sponsor and it has something in it that you say you've never advocated for, it creates an inconsistency. But let's take your position as you presented this morning. To not have a carve-out for rape and incest is also something that seems very backward-looking in terms of the cultural mores that we have today. Why do you not see rape and incest as areas for potential carve-outs, even if you are pro-life?
First, I think both of those instances are horrifying. And fortunately, they're extremely rare. It happens. And any time it happens, it's horrifying. It's a tragedy. But I personally and honestly and deeply believe that all human life is worthy of protection, irrespective of the circumstances in which that human life was created. I personally believe that you do not correct one tragedy with a second tragedy. That's how I personally feel very strongly about it. I believe all human life, irrespective of the circumstances in which it came into being, is worthy of the protection of our laws. And I recognize this is a tough question. It's a very difficult question. And I understand that. Believe me, I do. But by the same token, if I have to weigh the two equities here, I'm always going to err on the side of life. And that's how and I think that's a timeless principle. Certainly our economy has evolved, but when it comes to issues like the value of every human life, I think that's a timeless principle. It was true before, it's true now, will be true in the future.
It's interesting that you draw distinctions about the old and the new in certain regards, but in this one you say it's timeless because, as you know, cultural mores in this country, certainly the opinions of women are not in step with what you're saying right now. You're comfortable with that?
But the value of life is timeless. No. The value of life is timeless. The idea that a human life is worthy of the protection of our laws is not something that over time anybody should evolve on. I mean, you can change your economic policies.
But the idea you're deciding.
You can accept changes. The idea that human life is worthy of protection.
I know, but you're deciding when it is human life.
The world changes.
Let me ask you something. When you're looking at the future,
science has decided when it is human life.
Science has not decided it's at conception.
Let me correct you. Science has, absolutely it has.
Not at conception.
Science has decided that when science has concluded, absolutely it has. What else can it be? It cannot turn into an animal. It can't turn into a donkey.
No, but you know that the law has
the only thing that can become is a human being.
Look, of course, I understand the logic, but it's a little too simple.
It can't be anything else.
Senator, I understand that, but that's oversimplifying it a little bit.
Straightforward.
This is not my argument. This is a presented argument of science. It having a DNA map, so does a plant. It's about when it becomes a human being. I'm not saying what I think in answer to that question. That's not my position. But don't you think, if you want to be a leader of the future, that's a question that deserves an answer that is definitive beyond your faith. When does life begin? None of you are calling for any type of panel for consensus. That's your faith. That's your faith. That's not science.
No, it isn't.
It is not definitive science.
Absolutely,
I will have scientists on this show all morning from all walks of life who will say we cannot say it is definitely human life at conception. It is more faith than it is science.
Well, if they can't say it will be human life, what would it become then?
You're talking about the potential of it. It's when it is an actual human being. I'm not saying what my position is on it. I am also a Catholic. What
I can tell you this. No, I can tell you this, that every single one of us started at that same stage, that it can't become anything other than a human being.
But it is about
and that
science.
It's neither up to you nor I nor any politicians to decide that we're going to allow this life to move forward and this life not to. But a human being, its heart starts beating within, very early on in that process.
But not right away.
By the time most people find out they're even pregnant, it is well developed.
But not right away. And I'm not arguing.
Do you want to really have a government in the decision of deciding what a human life is and what's not a human life?
No, I don't.
That is a human life. It can't be anything
else.
No,
I don't.
Well, that's a radical position.
But, Senator, this is what I'm saying. You're over-talking the question, and that's your right of tactic. But I'll tell you this. When it begins should not be a focus of faith or of suggestion. It should be of science, just like we did when life ends. We used to have these same arguments 25, 30 years ago. You had scientists come together. They clarified a lot of positions. I'm saying, if you're going to be a leader of the future, this is something that deserves an answer that goes beyond faith. That's all I'm saying as a suggestion, not as an answer not as a suggestion to the answer of the question.
Well, first of all, I'm happy that my faith, let me tell you something. I'm happy that my faith influences my political position, because my faith teaches me to care for the needy. My faith teaches me to respect and love even my enemies. My faith teaches me to forgive those who slight me. So people should hope that my faith influences my political position. And in this case, yes, I'm proud to say that my faith influences me. It teaches me that God knew us when He formed us in the womb. And it does influence me to believe that all human life is worthy of protection, even human life that doesn't have a birth certificate, even human life that maybe some scientist wants to have a debate about. But I think the science is clear that when there is conception, that is a human life in the early stages of its total development, and it is worthy of the protection of our laws. And I'm not in favor of destroying human life because people decide that somehow they're going to make some obscure scientific argument in the opposite. I hope we are always a country that errs on the side of life.
I think it's that last point, an obscure scientific reference. We don't have scientific consensus. That's the concern. But thank you for laying out your position, Senator, on this and these other important issues. We look very much forward to having you on to continue this debate as you go through the election. Good luck to you, Senator.
Thank you.